Welcome back to the Today Show. I'm your host, Christopher Power. We're joined today by two paranormal investigators that will help you find out what's making that sound and bump it tonight. So we we were talking about the ambition to grow the channel. Of course, you don't want to lose the creative control of the outlet. When we talk about the different research and when we talk about the different projects and the areas that you want to go, how do you determine that, hey, that's the one that we're going to go do next, or that's the one that we've got to find out?
So we do a bunch of, like me and Brandon will get together, we'll do a bunch of preliminary research on a place. We look into the claims, we try and go to anyone who has come forward with those claims to see what their stories are. We talk to the business or the household to see what's actually happening, if other people are like hearing anything or seeing anything happen, and having not the same story but something similar to the other person who came forward with the original claim. Just okay, it's not just one person, it's multiple people. There could be something here. Let's look into the history of the building, the house, so we see how far back it goes. Even if it's recent, like we'll go back as far as we can to see what's going on. Is there a history to the house? Is there a history to the business? And then we'll try and contact the person. We'll reach out and be like, hey, we heard about a bunch of names coming from your establishment, your home, whatever the case may be. It's okay if we can talk to you about this and see if this is a possibility that you want to get into.
So it seems like you guys are a bit of amateur historians, amateur home inspectors, and professional paranormal investigators.
Yes. Yeah.
Licensed home inspectors, I must say, too. So
yes, unlicensed.
So when we talk about licensing, for an example, Brandon, you kind of mentioned it there. Do you need a license to do this? Are there programs that you can take for paranormal investigating? Like, how do you have your thermal reader and it says, okay, that's a pipe, but your K2 meter is going off and it says, well, there's no wiring here. That shouldn't be. How do you learn to read the equipment and use it?
So, that is a good question. And it's something that people really don't end up looking into before they end up coming into something like this. They did try to push for a licensing program a couple years ago. Didn't work out. It wasn't viable. Luckily for me, and I was kind of part of that trial. But it didn't end up panning out, obviously, and there's a lot of logistics involved, the reason why it would end up working out. But in and learning how to do this appropriately, there are surprisingly a lot of books on it, written by investigators who have done this for multiple years. There are articles that end up reading online that help you educate yourself. There's PDF files you can download. There's so many outlets out there where you can end up educating yourself on how to be a true paranormal investigator, not just, as I say, somebody who's in and thinks they're a paranormal investigator and just looking around and doing stuff that they should not be doing. So the resources are out there. It takes a little bit of digging. There's a couple books on Amazon that I'm buying as well. I don't know any of the people who, so I'm not going to plug their products, but
So when we talk about self-taught and we're going to the internet for how to use these things, how to read these things, I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here. What do you believe is the margin of error that says, I watched this clip or I've read this book and therefore I know how to use it, versus perhaps getting a reading wrong, or, with your monitor, you say, oh, that's the printer, but maybe I'm just reading it wrong because I'm learning from somebody who also didn't know how to do it from, I hate to use the word a professional paranormal investigator, but someone who has more experience or more electromagnetic experience than yourselves.
It's, in my opinion, and I don't know if Ashley can, branch off of this, it is it's knowing your equipment and how to use it and how to experiment with it different ways in order to differentiate between this happening versus that happening. And when we were getting started, we had members who didn't exactly know how to use some of the equipment, which really, I think, brought some of the investigative abilities down, or not be abilities, investigative capabilities that we had, kind of brought it down a little bit. So we realized, we can't just have people who think they know how to use equipment and then not know how to use it. Otherwise, we're going to end up getting false positives. They're not going to know how to differentiate between something that is wiring. Some people will see, oh, the thing's lighting up, something's going on. You see that sometimes on YouTube all the time. You have to learn how to experiment with what you have.
So knowing your equipment is kind of this key piece, knowing how it works, knowing the readings that happen, and that can avoid false positives. And of course, as you mentioned, you get out there and you start playing around with, no differently than a new phone, I would imagine. Hey, we have this new piece of tech. Let's figure this out. I mean, you get a new cell phone, you're figuring out how to get your emails again, how to import your contacts.
Exactly. It's just more of a trial and error, seeing what works, how it works, learning about it, like truly understanding the equipment that you're going to be using, and not just being like, hey, I have this, let's go do something. It's more of, no, like, let's read about it, let's learn about it, let's do all the research I can do so I can understand, and then let's go try.
Right.
It's a lot like when you're in school and they tell you you read in a textbook and then apply it to the real world. You can read all this stuff and using this stuff, but then how do you appropriately and experience and doing it yourself and all teaching accurately how you end up using this equipment?
So I guess a question for you guys then, with the equipment that you have, you're doing the investigation. We did say a portion of some people ghost hunt. When we look at you're going out there and you're reaching out to a spirit, an entity, or a piece of energy, do you have any concern at all that maybe it follows you home, or it does something to you mentally or physically, that you say, hey, I should probably stop messing around with this? Or, have you ever run across anything like that?
Ashley?
Times. I constantly have stuff like attaching itself to me, either good or bad, and sometimes it will come home. The only way, like, to really differentiate what is like a good and bad thing is, most of the time it just disappears by itself. It'll stay for like a day, see if it's really worth sticking around for, and then it just pops right out. Or it's like, hey, this person's interesting, I'm gonna stick around a little longer, and it kind of just goes on like that. In the past, I have had really bad attachments where they stay for like a couple months to about a year, and it takes some work to get rid of them, and it takes a lot of hard work to be like, okay, this is not okay, you're not allowed to be here, you need to leave.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to see the trailer for your newest episode.